Less than a minute. That's all it took, under 60 seconds, for Nintendo's mysterious Switch Online playtest program to instantly fill up. This is freaking wild. I was there minute 1 and I couldn't get in. Let's take a look at what Nintendo's officially saying about this. That we have reached the limit of accepted applicants, so we are no longer accepting applications. A little very redundant sounding, but it gets the point across. If you missed your chance, you're not getting in. In fact, even if you had your chance, you probably didn't get in, because there was apparently only a pool of about 10,000 people that they accepted to get in. In fact, I want to show you how quickly this filled up, because if you go to my Twitter page, check this out. I had time to apply for the process, get rejected, grab a screenshot of it, type a quick tweet up, and tweet it all out within the same minute that it opened up. The same freaking minute that it opened up. That's freaking wild that I got rejected and had time to tweet it all out. Yeah, very sad, but my hat's off to everyone that got in. I know several people from our own community made it in, which is super exciting. I can't wait to find out more about this program, even if the people apparently aren't officially able to talk about it according to the rules. So we'll see what happens here. I'm sure someone's going to talk about it, and we'll probably find out on the 23rd when it officially opens what this actually is. Now, since then though, since this program opened, we haven't really learned much more, though maybe a tidbit or two. And I've been thinking a lot more about this whole thing, what it could be, what it could mean, and of course, I don't know at all. I don't know any more than any of you do, but I have had some thoughts and some ideas I wanted to explore with all of you as to what it actually could mean. Because I think there is some exciting potential here, and really the mystery is what really makes it exciting. One of the details we did learn since I did the update video yesterday, which I speculated on what it could be, like a me versus Switch verse type service, which it probably isn't. Someone noticed that hidden in the source code is a message that says, "We recommend enjoying this playtest using TV mode and a wired internet connection," which is interesting for a few different reasons. One, it being on the TV suggests to me that they want a stable internet connection, especially combined with it being wired. And why would they want that if not for that being a necessity to test out the service? Which means one of two things to me, I think. One, this could be a new online-based gaming experience, a la, Splatoon or F-Zero 99 or something else that they want to test. Now, I don't quite buy this because they've done plenty of online games, including F-Zero 99, which itself is server-based, that I think Nintendo has a pretty good understanding of how online gaming works, and I don't know why they would need to test this unless it's something truly new that I can't even fathom. So maybe that is what it is, and my next idea could be totally off base. But my second idea for what it could be is that it could be an online game streaming service, a lot of what we've seen on PSN, or even, Google's own service that I forget what it was called, or On Live, all those successful services, which does give me some pause as to why Nintendo would pursue this themselves. But there are a couple of angles here I think Nintendo could use, including one I think is potentially extremely exciting for Switch 2, which we'll get to in a moment here. But if Nintendo did pursue an online game streaming service, that would require a persistent, reliable online connection, especially when you factor in that this is only open to a handful of countries, I think it was like 10 or so, in which location is paramount. You need to be close to the servers in order to have a good, stable online connection, so that one, it's responsive, so that you're not waiting too long, so that there isn't much input delay, and also so that you get a good video signal too, so it's not being degraded by, a poor internet connection, which again is why they'd want to be hardwired in so that the Wi-Fi isn't interfering with this. Now, I will admit, this would be very unlike Nintendo. As far as I'm aware, Nintendo's not done anything like this before, but this whole thing is very unlike Nintendo. Again, they've never really done an online playtest for something they didn't even announce before. The closest I can think of is the Splatoon test fire, but again, we knew what that was going in, and that really almost seemed to be more of a demo / advertisement than anything, though I'm sure Nintendo gained some insight into it regardless. But this is really something else entirely. So let's assume for a second it is some kind of online streaming service, and we have seen things like this already on Switch thanks to third parties, like I think some Capcom games, some Squaresoft games. So again, let's assume that this is some kind of online game streaming service. What could it be for? What could Nintendo possibly use this technology for that they couldn't just do innately on Switch? And I have, again, two ideas, one of which a lot of people have already been mentioning, is maybe it relates to the GameCube. I love the GameCube, everyone loves the GameCube, at least those who got to enjoy it originally, because of course it was, first off, an old system at this point, and also one of Nintendo's lesser selling systems until the Wii U came along, thanks Wii U. And everyone wants to either revisit these games or play them for the first time, because most of them have not been re-released on any subsequent platform outside of a handful of examples, like the most recent Thousand Year Door remake, of course. And hey, as it just so happens, I have the GameCube booted up here, and that's for a good reason, because one of our fans, Petabyte on Twitter, noticed something interesting, and that is, if we go to the playtest program logo here, they notice that grid sphere, which is interesting in itself, by the way, suggesting an online global connection of some kind. But that grid is some imagery that relates to the GameCube, because if we go to the GameCube's game page here, if we go to the game page, or even a couple of the menus here, you can see a grid in the background that looks quite a bit like that image we just showed you right there, only again on the curved surface. Now, obviously, grids aren't bespoke to GameCube. You can find them anywhere. I don't think Nintendo uses that imagery too often, and I'll be honest, the odds of this directly relates because of that is probably pretty unlikely. But I thought that was interesting in and of itself, and could lend credence to the idea of this possibly being GameCube related. And here's some other reasons for why it could be GameCube. Because, the Switch Online, the apps currently, they allow you to download every game at once, whether it's on NES, Super NES, or N64, which is fine for those games because most of them, including 64, are only a few megabytes in sizes at the most. The thing with GameCube is, those games are quite a bit bigger, up to 1.5 gigabytes each. Now, even if not every game filled every disc, because this is the first Nintendo platform to be on discs, they still, could be substantially larger. Meaning that if they had even like 20 games on there, you're looking at a potential 20 gigabyte download, which is a lot, a pretty hefty download for a service or a platform in which you may not even play every game. And I can see Nintendo possibly wanting to avoid that massive download. In addition, even if they made it even if they changed the model where you have to download the games individually, you still want to be able to hop between games, quickly, because you have to download each one individually. They went that route instead, meaning you wouldn't have that seamless experience you have on these other apps, again, without either downloading them all at once or waiting for each one to download individually when you wanted to play it. And the way around both those problems is to stream it instead. So they made the GameCube a streaming service. Well, that would solve that issue, because you could just begin to play those games instantly without having to download anything beyond a core app, which might be what this playtest is about, and you can hop into those games moment one. There is literally no wait, no install, you can just play it instantly, which would be pretty cool. Now, there are two potential issues with this that I can see. One, if Nintendo's concern is bandwidth related, well, streaming uses bandwidth up pretty quickly, meaning any savings gained from this will be pretty quickly overwritten by just the mere act of streaming itself, because streaming an HD signal, at least through Netflix, uses about 3 gigabytes per hour, meaning you could burn through an entire GameCube's worth of data, one GameCube game's worth of data in just half an hour, which is pretty wild. Or even 20 minutes even. So that itself wouldn't make a lot of sense. There's also the fact that some GameCube games like F-Zero GX are highly dependent on having a super good response time, meaning that any sort of delay, as minimal as it could be a big problem for at least a handful of games. Although that might be also an issue with my upcoming idea I'm going to mention. But I just want to throw that out there. F-Zero GX in particular is pretty susceptible to input latency. Anyway, so that's my thought for idea number one. I don't know if it's super likely it's GameCube, but I thought it was an interesting idea to explore, and I appreciate Petabyte connecting that grid to, of course, the one that Nintendo showed here. Okay, my second idea I think is a lot more exciting, because I think it could possibly, again, this may be a stretch, I think it could possibly relate to Switch 2 in a big way. Because one of the problems Nintendo has had historically, and it's not just Nintendo, but especially Nintendo, is that whenever they change platforms, whenever they make a successor platform, it always sells worse. Look at this data set here. Switch isn't on here, but we know that it sold extremely well, almost 150 million units. But ignoring that, every successor platform, until they reinvent it with the Wii, sells less than its predecessor. And in the case of the Wii U, it was the biggest drop ever. But even before that, from the NES to the Super NES, to the N64 to the GameCube, it's a pretty steady drop-off, pretty consistent. And I guarantee you, Nintendo's sweating it for the Switch 2, because in fact, I would even bet, no matter how good Switch 2 is, no matter how well it sells, it will not top Switch. And I think even Nintendo expects that in the best case scenario. The Switch is a powerhouse, lightning ball success that can't be replicated. But what if Nintendo could bring the Switch 2 to you right now? What if you already own a Switch 2 if you own a Switch? That's right, I am thinking there is a possibility that this online playtest program is to test the infrastructure for making your Switch, the Switch you have right now in your home, a Switch 2 in all but name, allowing you to access allowing you to purchase and download, or not even download, allowing you to purchase and play Switch 2 games on your current Switch through the magic of streaming. That means you will get the benefits of better hardware without needing to buy better hardware, which would be, frankly, crazy, but I could see Nintendo possibly doing it. Now, of course, they would still sell Switch 2. That would still be the ideal way of playing these games because you get the, the guaranteed, guaranteed image quality, no online degradation. You don't need a persistent online connection, which also means in the case of, Switch 2, that would allow you to take it on the go, which with it being an online gaming service, would be much harder on the current Switch because again, you need that online stable connection. Anyways, point is you need to be in a single location to stream these games, so you would lose some of the benefits of an inherent Switch platform. But what it would allow you to do, what it would allow Nintendo to do, is gain access to all 150 million owners. For the first time ever, Nintendo would not be starting over from zero. They'll be starting from the current platform base, which would be crazy. And then, whatever games you buy through this online program and can stream through it, you can then carry with you to the eventual upgrade you make on the Switch 2. So if you already bought a game on the Switch to stream it, whenever you do upgrade on Switch 2, you could then bring those games over without having to pay any additional fees to that platform, download it onto that platform, and play it locally and getting all those benefits with the Switch 2 hardware. This would be crazy, I think. And it's almost, it's such an extreme idea that again, it is a stretch to think Nintendo might be exploring it, but it's not impossible, again, considering looking at this data set. This has to scare Nintendo like crazy, that they've never had a successor platform that didn't completely reinvent itself that sold better than its predecessor. And this might be, again, a way to mitigate potential risks. And I think it would be so incredibly interesting if they did go this route. Now, there are some downsides. Again, one, streaming is still... streaming gaming in and of itself isn't perfect. There are problems that come with it. Not everyone has access to a great online connection. So that may limit, that might limit, even within the current Switch demographic, how many people can actually take advantage of it, especially because it may not even open in every country at once. We don't know, but we do know that there's a handful of countries in play right now, including the US, in their biggest markets, Japan, US, some European countries, etc. Another downside, potentially, is that you would not be able to use presumably any Switch 2 specific hardware. So if the Switch 2 controllers do get a big upgrade, in whatever form it is, whether it's, scrollable triggers or maybe better haptics, who knows, that presumably would not work on Switch 1. Now, based on all the leaks so far, the supposed leaks, the Switch 2 does not seem to be a massive game changer in terms of what the hardware actually is. So that may not be a big deal, or even what special features Switch 2 games have, they may still be able to work on Switch 1 hardware as well. There's also the possibility that Switch 2 accessories could still work on Switch 1. So maybe you could buy a Switch 2 controller without having to buy an entire Switch 2 and still use it on Switch 1. Again, that's all the speculation, but it's fun to think about. Now, as for getting back to how this benefits Nintendo, beyond it be able to reach an existing user base, which again, I think is a massive boon. I know some of you are thinking, but doesn't Nintendo want to sell Switch 2s? Wouldn't this, act as a disincentive to purchase the next hardware? And it very well might. But I do think that there's going to be enough benefits to buying a Switch 2, including possibly 4K visuals that you only get with a base unit that you wouldn't be able to get through streaming, among, other factors, including the portability factor, that there's still going to be that innate desire for it. And also there's a fact too that Nintendo is probably not going to be able to make enough Switch 2s initially to reach everyone that wants one, and everyone who wants one may not be able to afford one either. So it doesn't necessarily make sense to close the door on everyone that currently owns a Switch. Again, especially considering this data set, which again is terrifying for Nintendo, that every successor sells less. So in a way, the Switch 1 could act as a Trojan horse to the Switch 2, getting people build up a library for a future console or a successor console that they can then roll over to that console whenever they're able to afford or access that console. And it makes a ton of sense, literally, in this case for Nintendo, especially considering that the margins on Switch 1 hardware might be better than Switch 2 hardware. Now, obviously, we don't know what the MSRP at Switch 2 will be yet. Rumors are maybe $400. We don't know what it costs Nintendo to make, but there's a good chance, there's a good reason to think that with the Switch 1 not really getting a hardware price cut at all in its 7 years of existence, that they're making a pretty good margin on that, and Nintendo may want to keep that going. If they can keep making bank on the current Switch 1 hardware, even if people keep buying that into the future to play Switch 2 games, that might be a win for Nintendo. And this, again, this whole thing could be such a wild way of not just maintaining momentum of Switch 1, but maintaining momentum of Switch as a platform. This could be such a wild new way of handling console transitions in the future, where it's more of a gradual rollover rather than a harsh cutoff, where, hey, your Switch is dead, we're not making games for you anymore, you gotta go buy a Switch 2 in order to keep things going, which isn't gonna appeal to everyone, and shuts the door again on a massive demographic that they currently have. Why would you want to close them off when you don't necessarily have to? Anyways, that's my argument for it. I'm sure there's plenty of arguments against it, including the fact that this is, again, would be a rather bold and extreme move for Nintendo. Nintendo really hasn't done anything like this before, but that might be all the more reason to do it. Again, considering this freaking image, it has to be terrifying Nintendo. So those are my thoughts on it, everyone. What do you think? Do you think my ideas have a chance, whether it's GameCube Online or the possibility of Switch 2 games being streamable to your current Switch 1? Now, I want to stress real quick, whatever the case may be, I don't think we're going to know for sure what this actually is. Because even if this does relate to Switch 2, you're not going to be playing new Mario in this test program, I'm pretty sure. You're probably going to be playing existing games if that is the case, or something that doesn't directly relate to Switch 2. So whatever the case is, we still may not know the full extent of what this mystery playtest program actually is until Switch 2 is actually officially announced, possibly later this year, or at this point I'm thinking early next year. So those are all my thoughts, everyone. Hopefully you stuck with me to the end. I apologize if the video went longer than I expected, but I had a lot to say, and I'm so curious to know what you all think about this. Do you think it's a good idea for Nintendo to allow Switch 2 games to be streamable on Switch 1? Am I way off base? Could this be something else entirely, or could it really be GameCube streaming games that you can play on your Switch? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What I will say about this program, whatever it is, it's pretty exciting, because I gotta know what this answer is, and again, we'll probably have a better idea on October 23rd, as details hopefully start to leak about what this program actually ends up being. Anyways, on that note, I'm out of here, everyone. Thanks for watching. Click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and we'll catch you later. Bye!